Welcome to Real Estate Exposed, helping people in San Diego buy, sell, and refinance their biggest investment, delivering you timely truths, exposing important issues, and helping you get into the right home. Here are your hosts, real estate expert Daniel Beer, top-ranked professional by sales volume at one of San Diego's largest brokerages, and his mortgage partner, Todd with over $2 billion in funded loans.
Good morning to you. It's another episode of Real Estate Exposed with Daniel Beer. That's me, Windermere Real Estate, and Todd Pianin, my just the guy that we trust all our mortgage business to, or a lot of our mortgage business to. Todd Pianin at Home Street Bank. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Happy Thanksgiving weekend to you. You know, I mean, it's been it's something to be thankful for, and one of the things I'm thankful for is you and your team. So thank you very much. You guys keep us extremely busy. So I mean, I don't know how your turkey dinner was, but I was pretty stuffed.
Well, I appreciate that, Todd. And here's the reality is there's been so many changes to the way that loans are processed, and the real estate process in general has taken just a big shift, has hit the industry since October 3rd, something called TRID. Your agent needs to explain that to you, walk you through what used to be and what is today if you're not aware of it. But it really shifts, it shifts the way the flow and the progression of a real estate transaction. It makes it a lot more complicated, frankly, and everything has to fall into piece perfectly. And, the team was just talking about how you and your team at Home Street, just how different of an experience it is when we are working with you as opposed to when a buyer insists on a different lender. And so kudos to you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be back with you, our audience. It's another great Sunday, even though my man Todd here has a little bit of a long face.
I have a long face because we got a lot going on in the world right now. I mean, we can talk about, what happened this week with Turkey shooting down a Russian MiG. I mean, that was bad news. I mean, this is, there's so many planes flying over, Syrian airspace right now that that kind of stuff scares me, Dan. I don't know about you, but when you get all that stuff going on in the Middle East right now, it kind of makes me a little nervous about what's happening going into next year. It seems to me that our president's putting his head down in the sand. He's not doing anything about it. He's making us more of an isolationist country. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. I mean, if we don't kind of get our head out of the sand and we talk about what's going on in the world and we don't start taking a leadership role like we have in the past, I mean, this potentially could become World War III. I mean, think about it, Dan. You got this Thanksgiving parade coming up right now in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you had the Thanksgiving parade this past week. You got we've got the New Year's Eve dropping of the ball. I mean, if we have a terrorist attack in at one of those places, I mean, we're going to get roped into this thing so fast our head's going to spin.
I mean, but a lot of that just sounds like fear driven off of the recency of the Paris attacks. And I'll admit, look, I'll take you back to 9/11 and I'll tell you where I was when it hit. And I know I remember the exact time, the exact moment, roughly 7:15, 7:30 in the morning. I was woken up. I was actually in college at the time.
Right.
And I was in my dorm room. I get woken up by somebody telling me to turn on the news. And so I lazily, get the news on.
And you were in New York.
I was in New York. And by the way, 7:15, 7:30 in the morning when you're in college,
that's early.
That's really early
Yes.
when you're in college, right?
Yes.
So anyway, I turned the news on, and right on time actually to see the second tower get hit. And as you're watching this, you're kind of just not able to even fully process what's going on. It takes a little bit to really understand it and get it. But
Right.
point of the matter is I'll fast forward to when it all sinks in and everything's digested. I remember I was literally sitting in the hallway of my dorm room. Keep in mind, like you said, I was in New York, so I have people running up and down the hallway where, their relatives, now I was from San Diego,
Right.
just going to school in Syracuse, New York, but a lot of the people in the dorm were actually New York residents. Their families are in New York. Their families are in New York City. Their families were actually in the tower.
Right.
Now, I don't personally know of anybody that ended up with fatalities, but the point is watching that kind of emotion, that madness, that fear, and then I remember sitting there myself on the ground and just crying.
Right.
I was just crying, and I called my mom, and I'll admit that I was in large part crying because I thought I was about to go to war.
Right.
I thought I was about to get drafted.
Right.
and granted, I was in college, and maybe that would be an exemption, but
Right.
at the end of the day, I wasn't thinking all of that. I thought there was a chance that we were going to see a draft and that I was off to war, and I'm literally sitting there crying. And so I only bring this up because I understand I understand how recency can play into the fear.
Right.
And so, I just hate to hear us talking about something happening at the dropping of the ball. Not that that's not a possibility. Certainly, that's something that I hope that our government's looking out for.
Of course they are.
But it's also something that I don't want every American running out and just starting to live a fear-based life.
No, but there's just so many things going on, Dan. They're talking about taking the dollar off. They're talking about taking the dollar off the National Reserve, right? The reserve currency. They're talking about Russia and China right now aren't even using the dollar as a reserve currency anymore. You're talking about you've got Putin doing things, with Ukraine, with Syria, who's supposedly bombing ISIL, who's helping the prince or the king of Syria. I mean, you got a lot of things going on that are not really going in our favor. You've got a European recession happening right now, and we've got Janet Yellen, who's our Fed secretary, talking about raising interest rates in December. I mean, it just seems like we're putting our heads in the sand and we're pretending like there's not stuff going on. I mean, do you realize that France, nothing is ever, a terrorist attack hasn't happened in France in something like, I mean, I don't want to be fact checked on this, but 30, 40 years since, probably prior to World War II, I mean, this is a big deal. And our current president right now is not showing leadership. He's putting his head in the sand, and that's what scares the heck out of me. And he's allowing things to happen that I believe are not good for the marketplace. Yellen raising interest rates possibly 50 basis points in December. Why? So the stock market can go crazy when the rest of Europe is in a recession. Does that recession bleed over to us next year? And so she has an opportunity to lower interest rates again? I mean, what does all this mean? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's a big deal to hear about the fact that the dollar is now not going to be the currency of the reserve currency that everyone trades in.
They've been talking about that for years.
It's supposed to happen next
They've
year.
been talking about that since the crash of the market, right? So,
yeah, but it's supposed to happen. But
people like Peter Schiff,
but China and Russia are not trading in dollars right now. Period. Well, those are two. I mean, those are
sure.
big. That's a big deal. They used to trade in dollars.
Right.
They're not trading in dollars. So that tells you something that people are saying, hey, there's a change coming. There's massive change coming, and you can't blame our president 1,000% for everything, but I can tell you that it scares the heck out of me. This whole Syrian refugee situation that we're talking about, turning away people. Part of me, and I was talking to my uncle who was actually in World War II, and I was talking to my uncle about this and him just yesterday, and it's reminiscent of when the Jews were turned away from different countries, right?
I heard that analogy actually this past week as well, Todd. And I have to say, yes, on the surface, there's a little bit of a similarity there.
I don't want him here. I don't want him here. To be honest, my personal effect, I don't want him.
Todd, there's a huge difference, okay? When Jews were coming over from Europe, escaping World War II, escaping the Holocaust,
right,
from Europe, coming to the United States, and when ships did get turned back, and they got sent to, I believe, England and somewhere else. But when ships got turned back, and that was an absolute atrocity. The difference is, Todd, that Jews were not causing havoc and horror all across the world. Jews were not...
Agreed.
Machine gunning down concerts in Paris.
Agreed.
Jews were not flying airplanes into buildings.
Agreed.
Okay, Jews were not doing any of that. And while absolutely it's completely true, and people like to fall back on this position of how, and this is part of the issue, is just how scared people are to just talk about the real issue with the Muslim extremist population. Okay, is that those, unfortunately, for the vast majority of those really wonderful, really peaceful, educated, cultured
mindful
Syrian refugees,
right,
among their people are the people that did those things,
right,
are the people that are flying those planes and using this machine. And okay, so because of that, unfortunately, the real war, I don't think will ever be won or tackled until that majority peaceful Muslim population really gets up in arms about this horrible cancer that has infiltrated and taken over their population. Here's the deal, right?
Yeah, but the radical Muslims, Dan, respond to power. They respond to strength. And we're not showing power and strength right now.
That's right. But what I think one of the first things that needs to happen is we have to acknowledge every time that every time that we fall back on, just emphasizing how they're the minority and the peaceful are the majority.
Right.
Well, that may be true. But the reality is that in Nazi Germany, the majority of Germans were good, peaceful people. They were irrelevant compared to the minority of that became the Nazi regime. That minority actually caused a lot of damage that the majority was not able to circumvent. That shows itself up in go to any atrocity, go to any part of history. The Russian gulags. Go to anything you want in history. The majority of the people were quite peaceful. Were good people.
I don't disagree with you, Dan. But what I will say to you is, walking through the Holocaust Museum in Israel, and that one, I don't know when the last time you were in Israel, but when you walk through and you see and you go through the children's part when they read off all the names of all the children,
sure,
that were either died on the boats or were killed in the camps and that kind of stuff. That's where I don't want the Syrian refugees coming. I don't want, that's my position. I don't either.
It's not worth it for the 1 in 1,000.
Agreed. But it just that replays over in my head. That's the only thing.
I get it, but it is of a very different nature. What we need to see happen, what the world needs to see happen, is for that Muslim majority to grab it, to get its power back, and to really become part of the movement to eliminate what's going on within their own culture. Because otherwise, that minority, while it does remain a minority, a significant minority, it does grow, and with every single day it grows. When you're talking about children and women, and now you have women, by the way, that are starting to become these suicide bombers.
Right.
And why would you? Let's think this through. If you're a woman in the Muslim world, in the Middle East,
right?
Okay, not here in America,
right?
But in the Middle East, why would you take that on? Because if you think about it on the surface, you're talking about a culture that actually quite suppresses women's rights severely. So if you're a woman, why would you then, participate in actually blowing yourself up for the movement? And it's because, after years and generations of being a nobody, being a physical possession to your husband,
right?
Well, there's a way to make a statement. There's a way to actually participate and experience life, even if it's for a fleeting second before you get blown up and then meet, whatever it is you're hoping to meet in heaven. This is Real Estate Exposed on News Radio 600 KOGO. We're bringing this up because it's relevant. It affects every one of us, and real estate tied to everything hoping globally.
Correct.
And so these are issues that we need to just track, think through, and we hopefully will together collectively do what needs to be done in order to be more vocal about them. And some of these issues may or may not be politically correct, but it's not a new concept here that the world, and especially America, most of us, at least those of us with a little bit of a little bit of something in us, we're sick of it and we want it to go away, and we want to see this country remain in its glory that it's always been in, and eliminating these threats is going to be a large part of that. So
when we come back from the break, Dan, I do want to talk about Adam Daly sent us a question on our LinkedIn page in regards to what happens if the Fed does raise 50 basis points in December.
Coming up next, we're going to discuss that and what kind of buyers are we seeing in today's marketplace. I'm Daniel Beer at Windermere, the Daniel Beer Group. Todd Pianin, Home Street Bank. Feel free to Google us, find us on Facebook. Dan Beer, Todd Pianin. We'll be coming up right back with that. Back with you here. Happy Sunday morning. Real Estate Exposed on News Radio 600 KOGO. Daniel Beer, the Daniel Beer Group, and Todd Pianin at Home Street Bank.
Thanksgiving weekend, Dan.
Thanksgiving weekend. And so, Todd, you had somebody reach out to you one of the listeners reach out to you here and ask a question.
Yeah, so we had Adam Daly who reached out to us on our LinkedIn page and basically asked what's going to happen to interest rates if Janet Yellen raises them 0.5 point in December, because there's talk of mid-December of her raising interest rates. That's the rhetoric that she's been giving out. What'll happen, Adam, I can tell you right now, is that you're going to see interest rates go up. I mean, they're talking about raising what's called the discount rate, which is what banks borrow from each other. So you're going to go from 0 to 0.5, which means that our checking and our savings accounts will start we'll get a little more extra money on those accounts. But you're probably going to see 1/4 to 0.5 point price into interest rates in the marketplace, which if you're a buyer out there looking right now, I would suggest that you probably want to give us a call at Home Street Bank, Todd Pianin, and get locked into something. If not, you're running the risk. The other thing I believe that's going on, in my opinion, is I think it's too early to be raising interest rates. I think that she's talking about raising interest rates to prop up the stock market so we can end the year with high, because when interest rates go up, Dan, what happens is the stock market rallies, right? So money will flood back into the stock market, and you'll see stock prices start going up. And I know that you follow the stock market pretty heavily, and so because you have some investments in the stock market, I just believe that you're going to, it could be a way for Wall Street to make year-end bonuses for, if you look at who actually has put money into Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's pockets, it's mostly Wall Street. So Wall Street is more concerned about their bonuses than they're really concerned about what's going on in the economy. And I believe that the recession is not over overseas. I believe that we're slowly going back into a recession, and this is just a move to like a little scare move and a way to kind of increase the stock market and get people kind of off the fences and make some bonuses for all our Wall Street buddies down there at the end of the year, and to have mutual funds look great and have the S&P close great and have the Dow close great. That's just my rhetoric and my comments. I don't know what your feeling is about that.
Well, there's also the side of what's going to happen to home prices should those interest rates rise. And let's again emphasize this. Home prices or interest rates have been rising, and everybody just continues to talk about when they rise. They used to, just a number of months back, 6 months or so, 8 months back, interest rates were roughly 3.4% on a 30-year fixed, and today we find ourselves hovering at around the 4%.
3 7/8, 4 1/4 range.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
So they've been rising, and they will continue to slowly rise. And that's just the natural. That's just the natural flow of where those interest rates are going, because there's really nowhere else for them to go. Having said that, if Yellen
we're in a 10-year cycle. I mean, you and I both agree we're in the 10-year moving up cycle of interest rates.
Exactly. Where interest rates will move up over the course of the next 10 years, and that's just how they move historically. So, one commitment I've made to myself is to stop believing that everything that's happening is going to be the beginning of a totally new thing in history. Right? I mean, when the market was going up and up and up and up, 2003, 4, 5, and 6, and we thought, well, boy, maybe prices never will go down. Well, no, they did. And when they were down, 7, 8, 9, 10, when they were down and down and down, and it was like, well, gee, maybe we should never buy a home again because prices probably will never come back.
But you bought a home.
Of course
I bought a home during that time.
It's like, yeah, they came back.
Yep.
Okay, so interest rates, they've shown this 10-year cycle over the course of time, I believe, and you believe that it's happening again. Now, if Yellen raises the actual that discount rate,
right,
then yes, they'll rise more rapidly. However, given that our inventory levels as a market, we're at two or so months of inventory in San Diego County, I don't believe that there's going to be any kind of dramatic effect on home prices, not unless there's some kind of shock in interest rate, right? A severe jump, because we just have so little inventory that we could afford to double it and still be in a healthy place. I still see single-digit, low, 3, 4, 5% single-digit appreciation coming in 2016 and most likely 2017. So coming back out of the break, what we want to talk about is what kind of buyers then do exist in today's market. Who's out there? What's the profile of the buyer that's about to knock on your door, and how do you take advantage of that? That's next. This is Real Estate Exposed. I'm Daniel Beer with Todd Pianin, Home Street Bank, Daniel Beer Group. That's coming up.
Good morning and welcome back. This is a beautiful Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you guys all had your turkey and are all stuffed up. This is Todd Pianon from Home Street Bank and Daniel Beer from the Daniel Beer Group at the Windermere Homes and Estates. We are here at KOGO 600. You can look us up on Facebook, Google, wherever you want. We're all over the place. And Dan, one of the questions that I want to know what's going on is this is the winter months, and everybody says that the buyers are different right now. And what can you expect from buyers right now? What are you expecting? You have a lot of properties listed right now. You're probably one of the top. You are, if not number one or number two top listing agents in the county at the moment. So, tell me, what kind of offers, what kind of buyers are you getting? What's happening?
We're seeing a very interesting buyer profile right now. But frankly, it's what we expected, and it's what we've been talking about that we would see this time of year.
Right.
So the type of buyer you have in the marketplace right now, right? Like moving into Thanksgiving, moving into December, the holidays. Well, it's a very interesting buyer profile in that there's a couple of them, and they're all really motivated. That's the common thread.
Motivated.
The common thread is a very heavy amount of motivation by the buyer that's in the market, literally present today, looking at property. Think about it. One is that we're seeing a lot of buyers that are relocating to San Diego, and they're here.
That's good news.
They're here. Well, people are always moving in and out and so on. So we have a great market. People are coming into San Diego. So when you have this relocating buyer, such as somebody that we're about to close with literally today, tomorrow morning.
Can't be Monday morning. Yeah, correct. Monday morning.
So when you have the type of buyer like that person that's relocating, their kids need to get into school.
Right.
Okay. They're living in temporary corporate housing. They're just simply motivated to get going. They're motivated to get into a permanent position and just live their lives. So that's one type of buyer that we're seeing. Another, and we're seeing a lot of this, is actually we're seeing a lot of cash buyers right now.
Wow.
That are buying for tax reasons. They need to trigger a purchase, and they need to get in before year end.
Like a 1031 exchange type cash purchase, or just,
Some of them are coming through 1031 exchanges, but some of them are just, for whatever tax planning they're doing.
Got it.
They need to get into something, and they want that close date to be a 2015 date. And so we've probably seen more cash offers over the course of the last 3 weeks than we had seen in the previous, say, 2 months.
Wow.
And so that's something that's absolutely out there and present right now. The buyer that you have in this market, too, is sometimes it's that buyer that thought they were going to be really clever and kind of wait the summer market out.
Right.
Because they were going to get a really good deal in the winter months.
Right.
But what they find is that there's actually a lot less for sale. Because a lot of the sellers, and by the way, if you're a seller, this is something you'd want to think about and take advantage of. This is something that I'd be happy to put a study together on what the real numbers look like for your neighborhood specifically. But a lot of the sellers out there, they're totally on holiday mode and asleep at the wheel. Everyone's waiting to come out of the new year and start planning for spring and summer sales because that's just what people do. So what you have is a lot less inventory, a lot less homes for that buyer that's out there today to look at. And so
the person who used to want to get a deal, who thought they were smarter than everybody else,
exactly.
who figured that, okay, houses have been on the market for a long time. I can lowball. I can probably get this deal happening.
Exactly.
They're running into an inventory problem. They're running into all kinds of problems.
And they've waited already. There's family reasons. There's personal reasons on why. They can't just continue to wait forever and into the next summer. Psychologically, their mind still works around a concept where summer will be bad for them because there's so many buyers in the marketplace.
Right.
Even though the reality is that there's actually also so many more sellers that it's actually quite nice to be buying in that time of year.
Right.
But having said all that, that's how they operate. So that buyer, they're kind of in a place now where they can only tell their wife for so many months and months and months that, honey, we'll finally move at this point or this time.
Right.
Their kids are getting big. There's personal issues that are in play. Okay, so that buyer is going to buy, and typically there's a personal issue such as that baby that's coming. They're into month 7 or 8 on the pregnancy, and so there's a large degree of motivation.
You know what's so weird about that, Dan, is usually in November and December and January, we get which this year has been totally different on the buyer side. For our side as giving mortgages, it's usually we get the people who really shouldn't be buying, who either have down payment issues, credit issues, scrambling to make a deal happen. I mean, so
that's who you're seeing today, or who you typically see?
Who I typically see.
Okay.
And what we're seeing, what you just reiterated is, I've got buyers who are just like super, from your team and from all the other agents that send us business. We're seeing buyers who are like put together, who've got their down payment, who want to close. I mean, it's a weird experience. I mean, I don't know what we'll see what January holds, because January I always call the funky month, because it's always realtors kind of get back into the business and they just start grabbing anybody and anybody. They talk to the grocery store clerk and they try to sell him a house. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they're just trying to do something.
Well, there's also a large degree of interest rate fear. Tying back into the previous segment, there's a lot of interest rate fear. Yes, they've been gliding up ever so slowly, but there's a fear of them jumping. And so the buyer today is highly motivated, and typically either has a family reason, a relocation reason, or a tax planning reason on why that purchase needs to happen. And if you're one of the sellers that are out there making your home available to them, while all your potential seller competition, your neighbors, are asleep at the wheel, it makes for a very interesting time of year. And we're seeing it. I mean, we're on pace to do we're on pace to close out November somewhere between 15 and 16 homes sold. And for us, that would be a good month. When on a typical month, I'll average roughly somewhere between 10 and 11 homes sold. So 15, 16 months or homes sold in November, which, by the way, October and September consecutively were also record months for us. And moving into December, it'll be interesting to see how that looks. I appreciate the kudos, but I bring it up because it's just counterintuitive to how most people think. And when we look at our fourth quarter performance versus the rest of the year, the fourth quarter will actually have sold the most homes of the entire 2015 calendar.
But Dan, I mean, you're not typical. You don't run your business. You're not a typical agent in San Diego. So I mean, your numbers. I mean, you run your business as a business, and you do things consistently over and over and over again that creates activity, which also creates business, which thankfully creates a lot of business for us and the other other agents we work with. But I mean, if you're not working with Dan doesn't like me to do this, but if you're not working with the Daniel Beer Group, you're making a huge mistake, because they turn, and we've had his buyer's agents on, Dan's been on. I mean, you guys are making a massive mistake, because he takes care of his sellers, he takes care of his buyers, and he gets your home sold. I mean, if you look at if you go to if you go to San Diego HomeFinder.com, where you can actually search for homes, again, San Diego HomeFinder.com. I mean, Dan you can read about Dan, and you can hear how all the great things that Dan does, which he won't talk about on the radio.
So we've teed up how it's actually a very interesting opportunistic market for home sellers that are actually out there for these motivated buyers, where we can actually then, ease the pain and create some light at the end of the tunnel for that frustrated buyer that's out there today with very little inventory to look at. Is when you do work with a team like ours, because we have such a much higher degree of volume than what anybody else is out there is going to have, we can actually put you in front of listings that aren't yet on the market, homes that are coming. We typically know about anywhere upwards of 50 to 100 homes in all across San Diego County, different markets, different locations and neighborhoods where homes are coming, either because those sellers have already reached out to us and we know their plans. And yes, their plan may be, say, a March sale, but we're very much free to make a phone call and say, listen, I know you're selling in March, but we have a buyer that fits the profile of what your home offers.
Selling today.
So we can try to put you in front of a property before the rest of the market gets to it. And secondly, a lot of that comes actually from other agents, because they know how many buyers we're representing and how
sellers representing.
Well, no, we represent a lot of buyers as well.
Oh, you're getting a lot of incoming phone calls.
So we'll have a lot of agents that actually will reach out to us and say, something along the lines of, hey, Dan, we have a listing that's going to be coming up in this area, but not till after the holidays. Well, now we actually put that into our database as far as being able to track it, to offer it to you, our buyer, and try to ease that inventory pain that we're experiencing by being able to put you in front of the market. You know, if all you're looking at is the next home that pops up on Zillow, well, guess what?
You're
just
too late.
You're just
too late.
you're just part of the crowd, right?
Right.
So you have to have a strategy and a plan and an advisor that is going to be able to put you out ahead of the market.
And your advisor should be somebody from the Daniel Beer Group, if not Dan Beer, one of his buyer's agents. I can't give a big enough endorsement to tell you that when and if I sell my home, I'm only using the Daniel Beer Group.
I appreciate that, Todd. Listen, coming up next, we're gonna jump into the fourth segment. We love having you here. Thanksgiving weekend. Daniel Beer at the Daniel Beer Group. Todd Pianin saying all these kind words, and he's right. I don't like when he says them, but saying all these nice, kind words about us. I appreciate that, Todd. Home Street Bank. And we're really excited to wrap up the show with you. Coming up next, we're going to dive a little bit deeper in here to show you how you can create an advantage for yourself in this opportunistic market, whether you're buying or selling. Welcome back to our final segment of Real Estate Exposed right here on News Radio 600 KOGO. I'm Daniel Beer, the Daniel Beer Group, and
Todd Pianin from Home Street Bank. And Dan, you know what I haven't done? Is I haven't wished you a happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
I actually noticed that, Todd. I noticed you hadn't.
And you hadn't wished me a happy Thanksgiving.
That's by design.
I know. You're always by design. But I will tell you that The Force Awakens is going to break all records.
The who?
The new Star Wars movie is going to break all records.
What's Star Wars?
Yeah, exactly.
Star Wars. And a personal apology to clients of mine that we just actually had to remove their Star Wars. Part of the staging was actually removing the Star Wars like life-sized decals all over the walls. You know, like those fat heads, the sports fat heads, right? Those big decals that you put up on the wall. I mean, you had like a life-size Darth Vader up.
Oh, you know who Darth Vader is?
I've heard of him. I think he's someone's dad or something like that.
He is someone's dad. He's Luke Skywalker's dad.
So, Todd,
I want to talk about something exciting that's happening in 2016. The high balance conforming loan limit for FHA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac is going up. What does that mean to you, and what does that mean for you as a seller and as you as a buyer? That means we're going from a high balance conforming, which is a lower interest rate than jumbo rates. We're seeing it go from 562, 350 to 580, 750.
All right, so really walk us through just very, very simple terms from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? What does it even mean that there are loan limits? And why is this potentially good news or factually good news for the listener?
Well, so Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the largest buyers of loans out in the country right now, right? And so they limit the loan size that they can buy. And so they keep increasing this high balance loan limit, which in turn means that people can put less money down and still get a very good interest rate. In 2016, you'll be able to put down 5% and for a 580 purchase price. You can do an FHA loan with 3.5% down and still have a 580 750 loan amount. I mean, I think that for sellers, this is going to open up a whole. It's only a little bit. We're talking about a 3% bump from where it was in 2015. But that extra 3% could actually bring more buyers into the marketplace, and I think it can help you sell your home that much faster. I mean, it's good. I think it's a really good thing. I mean, once we get closer to 600, once we get over 600, then that's going to be a really good thing. But I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about the fact that now we're actually going to have a 5% down high balance program too.
Well, I do think it's significant because so many buyers buy up to their absolute limit.
Correct.
And by the way, not something I would ever suggest you do. I think
us.
Yeah, especially you guys. I mean, that's why we refer you, is because we know you're doing the right thing. But nevertheless, we see it when we're representing sellers, and we see those buyers come through, and we talk to their lender. We have their lender. We have them talk to you, and truly, a lot of people are buying right up to their limit.
Right.
And so that is significant. That 3%. That's significant. And also, when we go back to the previous conversation we had in the second segment regarding interest rates rising,
right?
And that's going to theoretically shrink the market to some degree. Then this counteracts that and opens it back up. And so
a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, at least, offers a little bit of balance.
Correct. I think it's super exciting. I mean, you're talking about even for our veterans out there.
You could tell, by the way, not to interrupt Todd, but you can tell just what a mortgage geek he is because this is super exciting to him.
It is super exciting because even for our veterans out there, you can do zero down and buy something for $580,750. I mean, that to me is pretty darn powerful. And I love our veterans, and I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, Dan, you always talk about virtual shelf space. Mm-hmm. And now that we can, we could, in essence, our virtual shelf space can go up a little bit, right? For some people.
Well, yes. I mean, at some point that will trickle down to having that result. But yes, that is the case. And by the way, before we come out of the show here, I do want to share some local, really nice news. Hopefully, I'm not just making more of it than it needs to be, but the city of San Diego, not the Chargers, but
right.
The city of San Diego finished a study with the NFL. And anyway, long story short, the result of the study was that the city has to show its feasibility for actually being able to the feasibility of actually being able to fund a stadium.
Okay.
And the study actually was very positive, was very much in San Diego's favor. San Diego did a great job of showing that they're capable of doing so through their financing plan, and that's something that the NFL has to take into account. And so the chances of San Diego being able to put a stadium together, that was boosted in the eyes of the NFL, and that's just nice news. Hopefully it doesn't turn into just a blip on the radar. But thought it was worth mentioning as we battle to hold on to them.
San Diego Raiders.
Okay, you do. So we're really, really happy you joined us. Real Estate Exposed here on News Radio 600 KOGO. We hope that you'll be back with us again next week, where we will be with you 9 a.m. to discuss everything and anything happening in the real estate market. And by the way, make sure you connect with us, okay? You have personal questions, issues, your neighborhood's different maybe than some of the ones we discussed. Let's take a close look. Find me, Daniel Beer, or Todd Pianin, whether it be on Google, Facebook, the internet. You'll find us. We're everywhere. We love you.
Home Street Bank, a member of the FDIC, equal housing lender, MLS, and MLS ID number 304014. See you next week.